What's up, everybody, and welcome to another Truth Seeking Friday edition into the holiday season here. And joined with Jay Young, and I'm Greg Dowd. And tonight we're going to be having a discussion about the implications of a future with artificial general intelligence and how do we find meaning or adapt to a future with such intelligence. So, what's up, Jay? How have you been, man?
That's good. That's really good. I was really glad that you wanted to cover this, and this is something I've been tracking kind of on the fringe for about 20 years now, and trying to get into the implications of not just AI but AGI, artificial general intelligence, and then eventually ASI, artificial superintelligence, is important. And trying to get more people interested in this has been a real challenge. So I'm very happy that you wanted to cover this. I think this is a great idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of different implications for moving into a future where this is a high probability of happening.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for humanity? And finding meaning in a world where you have some type of artificial intelligence that could be used as a great tool, but could also be used as something negative as a method to control humanity. So there's a lot going on there, and it's going to be interesting, kind of going through it because I know I'm a little bit skeptical on the way that the developments have been going in the whole artificial intelligence realm and the people that have been pushing for it. And there seems to be a race towards developing the best artificial intelligence system, all these server systems
Yeah.
and all this investment going towards it. It seems like it's being developed without a whole lot of forethought
Yeah.
on things like safeguards for it and you know what exactly is the goal in creating this general intelligence or super intelligence, and will it be benevolent or malevolent? And there's uh, that's, I guess, the debate and the way it seems to be going, and the people involved and the people that are behind a lot of it are not so nice people. So
Yeah. And I think even the definitions of malevolent and benevolent, uh, they're a little fuzzy. How do we define that? At what point is something beneficial by one definition, but harmful in another definition? Some people could say, "Oh, well, I'm doing this for your own good," and half the population may say, "Yeah, that's right." Another half of the population may say, "No, that's not, because you're taking away my choice to participate in this thing, whatever that is."
So where to begin, man? Where I maybe looking at what is artificial general intelligence
Yeah.
in and of itself. Looking at the definition of that, and
So one area I'd like to kind of kick off the discussion is the book "The Singularity is Near" by Ray Kurzweil. He's been tracking this for really probably 30, 35 years now. I think the first book he wrote on this is "The Age of Artificial Intelligence." I'm sorry, "The Age of Learning Machines," and then the book after that was "The Age of Spiritual Machines." I think that's what it was. And then the third book in the series is "The Singularity is Near." And about 1 or 2 years ago, he came out with the fourth book in the series called "The Singularity is Nearer." And when this book came out 20 years ago, I devoured it. It's thick, and I don't mean just physically thick, but also he goes into a lot of depth and detail on each and every major topic. And he really looks at, the definitions of things like entropy, disorder, things like that. He also starts to look at the historical context of the cost of sending 1 megabyte of data, the cost of storing 1 megabyte of data, and the cost of processing 1 megabyte of data. And we see that the costs have been going down logarithmically or exponentially, depending on how you define it. And because of these convergences, he has shown that he was predicting we'll see AIs in about, such and such year, and then AGI, and then ASI. And because he's a futurist, he has been pretty darn good with his predictions. He developed what he calls the law of accelerating returns. And, I don't know if we're able to do a search for that, but he has some really good graphs showing how the period for doubling, typically on an exponential curve, the period for doubling stays the same. It's always, 10 years. It's always 15 years. And every 15 years, you get a doubling. With the law of accelerating returns, it's a double exponential. So the period for doubling actually is decreasing every cycle. It could be doubling every 20 years, then 19 years, then 18 years. And so with this, he was actually able to provide some really good projections into the future of how we will see artificial intelligence come about. And he has some pretty, I think, reasonable measurements or parameters for what we consider AI, AGI, and then ASI, artificial superintelligence. And, AI, we've actually had AI for a while. Some may call it machine learning, where it's a fairly static neural net. And what happens is, some of the parameters may change for this thing. And it has iterative loops that allow it to learn. And we're kind of in that tipping point to go from machine learning, AI, into, real AI, and then moving into artificial general intelligence. And when we have artificial general intelligence, that is basically human level intelligence. And definitions and meanings may vary from organization to organization, person to person. So I'm just kind of giving you my bias right now. That's basically where we have machines that basically have human level intelligence. So think of any of us could buy a box, right? Whether it be a really good laptop or a virtual environment. We load up, some open source project that has AGI level intelligence, and we basically have a human mind in a box at that point. And we can feed it problems, and similar to a human, it can have expertise or at least competency in a multitude of areas. We've all know people who are kind of those Renaissance people. They're good carpenters, and maybe they're also a surgeon, and they're also really good at driving. Just so a multitude of things, and that would be the movement from AI, which is pretty much on one particular track. They do one thing really well. And then AGI would be a machine that can have a multitude of competencies. The difference is that it's not hampered by, I'll say, physiology. It's not hampered by sleep. It's not hampered by the rate of information flow. It's not hampered by being exhausted. And it can work literally 24/7. And in some measures, we could say that it wouldn't just be an IQ of 100, the way someone else would have an IQ of 100 or 150. We could say this entity could actually have an IQ of 1,000, because not only can it learn one thing really well, it can learn through a multitude of different channels in a broad spectrum of different disciplines, if you will. Like I said, surgery and carpentry and car racing. And that would effectively give it an IQ of 1,000. That's a lot, right? And especially for something that doesn't need sleep. And At that point, the only limitation is the amount of hardware we can throw at it, the amount of electrons that we can throw at it. So, could you imagine we have 2001 Space Odyssey, HAL, right? Any one of us have access to that. We could spin up an instance on AWS or Google Cloud Services, and we have access to that. That's pretty amazing, right? And then for full context, ASI, artificial superintelligence, would be where one box would basically have the intelligence of a multitude of people. And at that point, we're talking about IQs of, not just 1,000, but 10,000, 100,000. There could be an entire society that could reside in a box, if you will. And at that point, we have no conception of that. That's like an amoeba trying to understand a human, because that human's orders of magnitude more complex. And so we wouldn't be able to comprehend that. So even with our relationship to an AGI, that would almost be like an amoeba to a human, because even though it's supposed to be one human mind to one human mind comparable, its ability to consume information and process that information in such a rapid form would allow it to learn knowledge and wisdom far greater than what any one human could do in a single lifetime. So I hope that kind of sets the table for what we consider to be AI, AGI, and ASI.
Cool. It really brings up it brings up to me the short story with Isaac Asimov. He has the short story called The Last Question.
Yeah.
And it's basically humans keep creating computers to help them solve the problem of entropy is what is the main problem that is going on. So the tendency toward disorder in the universe, and they just keep creating more and more computers until the end is the computer system. The universe is going towards complete entropy, and the computer recreates the universe.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
a pretty
short story.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild little short story, but it brings that up to me. So it's like, I know a lot of people talk about the whole simulation theory thing, and it's almost like, kind of like, has this already happened before? Has maybe humanity reached a point where it did create something like that, and then it's just all gets reset into a new simulation or something like that? So is it a simulation stacked on other simulations?
Yeah, right. So a quick entertaining aside on that. There's a really good sci-fi writer by the name of Ian Banks. I remember he wrote a sci-fi series called the Culture series, and in one of the books called the Hydrogen Sonata, he goes into this topic of one society or culture that's actually based on reality creates a simulation, and then that little society in the box develops, and they create another simulation inside the box, and it keeps on going, and it's just turtles all the way down. And then there's a whole moral and ethical dilemma. If any of those societies, whether the real ones or the simulated ones, wants to pull the plug on the box, are they engaging in genocide because those new entities, they meet the criteria of life? And I thought that was a fascinating little intellectual exercise that Ian Bank went into on that book, The Hydrogen Sonata. So if anyone likes that sort of thing, it's fascinating.
What was that author's name?
Ian Bank, I think, IAN and BANK, or Bank or Banks, I don't remember. And the book is The Hydrogen Sonata. Really well written. I've read two, Consider Flevis and The Hydrogen Sonata, and both really well done. He's just such a good writer.
Cool. So this future that we're moving into, you kind of gave like an outline talking about the Industrial Revolution, And um, my grandfather, he lived to be 101. He kind of went from seeing the horse and buggy to cars to planes and spaceships and all kinds of stuff, and lots of large changes in his lifetime and his time span. And as this technology sets accelerates, like we're talking about, we're already living in a time where we have access to a lot of this technology, but in many ways it seems like it's been detrimental to people in a lot of cases, where I don't know if we over the thousands and thousands of years of human beings living on this planet, being outside in nature, uh, and adapting and to that environment, versus now we're mostly inside, we're staring at screens a lot, we're working with technology a lot, and there's a lot of things specifically with the light coming from our screens that isn't so beneficial for our biology, and uh, it, everything seems to be moving at a faster and faster pace. New electromagnetic fields popping up, types of EMF fields popping up all over the place and all around us. Uh, 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 on one hand, if you can view the technology as a tool, it could potentially accelerate your productivity. But on the other hand, social media, all these things that we have access to, could they become a time sink for you, waste your time, control your perception, change the outcomes of things that you could be doing to be productive? I see a lot of that. I see a lot of stories of people kind of going down a negative pathway with some of the technology that's out there right now.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the spectrum, though, are the Luddites, right? The completely anti technology, like I guess the Amish would be an example of that.
Yeah. Or Tyler Durden from Fight Club, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A great book, by the way.
Yeah. And I find myself, looking at a lot of this stuff and a lot of the technology, and seeing, I can see both sides of it. I can see several examples of it being used as a tool to help people, but I also see it on the negative side a lot, with the overreaches in surveillance and the erosion of privacy, and and then just people finding meaningful work moving into an age like that. What is how do you find meaning and add value?
Yeah.
Which I believe is an important part of being human, is to figure out how you can provide value to others. So I'm somewhat, I mean, I use the technology a lot. We wouldn't be here if we were using the internet and being able to stream with each other.
Yep, that's right.
And play around with using the artificial intelligence to create music and things like that for shows, whereas it didn't have don't really have musical capabilities under my belt and the skill for that. So
yeah,
it kind of opens that up as a new realm. And so yeah, it is very interesting, this time that we're moving into. And what are what are your perspectives on where things are and where they're going right now? Do you want to move into some of this, some of these resources and references here with one of your first ones was 12% employed at graduation?
Yeah, so that's a pretty short video. We can probably play that since it's a YouTube video. We can probably play it at 130, 150%. Yeah, Peter St. Ange, I think doctor, and he's a good analyst, a good economics analyst, and he basically is talking about we're starting to see the cracks in the system in the sense that people who are graduating have a really low level of ready employment, and I think part of the reason he attributes to this is the AI revolution that's come along, and companies they're basically attritioning out some parts of the force, and they're just not backfilling positions. So it's basically they're not getting rid of people; they're just not hiring people, and that can be pretty intense as well. So I don't know if you want to take a look.
Yeah, let's check it out.
A new study finds just 1 in 8 college grads have a job by graduation. That used to be almost half. Almost makes you think maybe we don't need to import tens of millions of third worlders to fill jobs. The number comes from careerplannerintelligent.com, who reports just 12% of Gen Z college graduates have secured full-time employment by graduation, while 58% are still looking for work, making do with hourly gigs at Home Depot or living in mom's basement playing League of Legends. For comparison, almost half of millennials and Gen X had a job by graduation. In fact, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the unemployment rate for 20 to 24-year-olds is now almost 10%, the worst since the molasses speed recovery after the 2008 crisis. Well, honestly, the unemployment rate is now identical for young people with college degrees and high school degrees. A year ago, it was a third worse for high schoolers. In other words, the 150,000 degree is now zero protection. Intelligent blames AI taking entry-level cubicle jobs, but a big part is also the hiring binge in 2021 and 22 when companies were competing with stingy checks, paying 20-somethings who also play video games in the basement. Meanwhile, a separate study from LinkedIn found entry-level hiring is down 17% since pre-COVID, with hardest hit being tech, finance, and marketing, which are all AI exposed, while healthcare and construction are holding up just fine. This all means recent grads are taking what they can get. Resume Builder found almost 40% of Gen Z college grads are working blue collar or the trades. These are college grads, so they wasted the degree. Another study by Cengage found just 30% of recent grads found a job in their field, as in 70% of the degrees were wasted, 150K down the drain. Keep in mind, this is all with AI still in its early days, waiting to fix the hallucination problem before it deploys at scale in millions of companies. So what's next? Brought to you by iTrust Capital. If millennials thought they had it tough with 2008, they ain't seen nothing. Between the COVID hiring hangover and AI, we are in the early stages of a no-hire, no-fire economy where companies might hold on to older workers, but they are in a hiring strike for Gen Z. Deportations could buy us a couple years, assuming college grads are willing to take a real blue-collar job, and more help is on the way from the trillions of investment dollars Trump is bringing in trade deals, along with a Fed that just flicked to job-creating money printing at the expense of inflation down the line. Still, unless we make it much easier to create jobs and gigs, so less red tape, less employment tax, more startups, Gen Z is cooked. Follow for daily videos. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time. Gold and silver are soaring this year, and with
a little bit of a bleak outlook there for the new generation.
And I think Dr. St. Ange, he put this in context. He said they just spent maybe 4, 5, 6 years and maybe $150,000. That's not only direct cost, but it's opportunity cost. And something that some of the same groups you and I are members of, we've talked about a lot of people moving into the blue collar jobs because they can get into this pretty quickly, and they have very little in the way of debt when they come out of their respective learning institutions, and in a pretty short period of time they can make pretty good living, especially in the area where you and I live. This area is growing a lot, and there's demand there, so a person can come out of their respective training, and within 4, 5, 6 years, they can make close to 6 figures. For a person to be making that kind of money, and then while another person is going to college, and by the time that person gets out of college, this person could be getting close to 6 figures. That's pretty darn impressive, And in my timeline of job replacements, and we can get this later on, is I think this will be one of those jobs that those blue collar jobs like plumber, carpenter, etc. These will probably be the last ones to be replaced because it's the combination of AI and robotics, and that's going to be not impossible, but that would probably be the biggest hurdle to replace. So that may be something we talk more about at the end of the episode, but I think that's important for people to keep in mind.
So on one hand, you know, we have a lot of this happening, and for a very long time, probably, I don't know, probably 2011, 2012, I started to see a lot of this stuff kind of forming, and looking at maybe how could we use some of the technologies that we already have to become more resilient on our own. Like, because I do think that with the advent of a lot of this, that you could almost think of it as having if you have a little piece of land that you could kind of turn it into your own little Mars colony, or your own little very productive farm, right? And have the potential to adapt some of these different technologies, so where you could kind of have your own ecosystem set up, and permaculture and resilience and farming lifestyle, in a way going back to Jefferson's idea of the country, where you have a bunch of small independent farmers, and you have them like creating their own little businesses and having their own little little fiefdoms on their own land, using some of this technology to help accelerate your productivity. Maybe it's going to be a little bit of a bifurcation where people are kind of pulled into a real, like, UBI scenario, where you've got this UBI being generated to keep you on the plantation, so to say, so that you don't want to do your own thing. But on the other hand, if you can adapt and start using and implementing these certain technologies now to make yourself more resilient, that you could move in the direction of being your own little independent kind of ecosystem farm, small scale farm kind of operation, and be pretty autonomous.
So then the question is, will they have robots to help with the labor on the farm?
Right. Do you adopt those things? I've seen several little almost little CNC bots that you could set up, that you could have working your garden. And the problem is, do you have the capital to make that happen? And I've heard the argument where we have all this. It was a guy that is starting a motor company called Edison Motors, and he recently put out a video talking about how all the cars have become a lot more complicated, and now you're going to have to pay like a subscription plan for some of these, or that's the idea for the rollout of some of these newer trucks, and even farm equipment, to pay a subscription plan for service, so that somebody else will service your vehicle instead of you being able to DIY repair your vehicle yourself, and have common parts and things that you can interchange with them. And so he's made the argument that we have the capabilities more than ever now to make and produce a lot of things, but everything that we're producing has got us in this trap of this you'll own nothing and be happy kind of realm. So that's kind of where it's moving into, is this like, you'll have this kind of cool equipment and stuff, but if you don't have access to the source codes and stuff like that, then do you really own it, or somebody else own it?
Yeah, this is something, I know we're kind of skipping ahead a little bit here, but this is something that I've been giving some thought about over the past couple months. And I think one of the things that we can do to prepare as individuals is own the right things. Because here's what it comes down to, that as humans, we only have pretty much two things: the work that we can do or the things that we own, right? And obviously we can do both, right? But if AGI will be able to go in and basically take over these jobs, then that kind of takes out the things that we can do front, right? So our ability to earn money, earn a living through that, offering our services, whether it be as contractors, vendors, or employees, that pretty much evaporates, right? Then it leaves the other side is the things that we own. And I think that, and everyone knows my bias around this, around Bitcoin, right? Is you know, Bitcoin will be the currency of AIs in the future, right? And I hope it is the currency of the world. I hope it's the global reserve currency. But that's just one thing to own. You know, there are other things, and I think you're digging into something important, Greg. Is the idea of, hey, if you got your plot of land, at least you own that, right? Excluding property taxes, right? But at least you own that. That's something you can own, and you can do something with it. So this is something I've been thinking a lot about. Is, you know, we need to acquire useful things, you know, as reasonably possible over this time period, this transitional time period. And maybe that's the thing that saves us. Maybe we're not doing work in the traditional sense of, I go to an office and I'm doing the TPS reports, right? For you office fans, you know, as I think that that point is, I'm managing, or have an AI who's helping me manage this thing that I own, whether it be financed through Bitcoin or a piece of property, you know, that I'm doing permaculture, right? And I think that's the thing that we need to consider. And then the sooner we can accept it, the sooner we can start moving over to that ownership based economy.
Yeah. I think figuring out different ways that you can add value to others moving into the future here, and just upping your skills in different areas is going to be one of the ways to adapt to the times that are coming. And like you said, you know, I don't think they're going to be able to replace a lot of the trades and stuff for a while.
Yep.
And like the gentleman was sharing on that YouTube video, it really is like one of these things where the artificial intelligence and a lot of these desk jobs, if you're hoping on a desk job, like, you better have an alternative plan.
Yes, absolutely. That's the first category of job that I think will be, if not totally replaced, like majority replaced, like 80, 90, 95% would be replaced. Those virtual, purely data aggregating, data analyzing, data moving, data repository type jobs, because they're all virtual. They're almost pure cyber, right? Well, that's where AI lives, you know, and I think that's it, you know, people who do this, and you know, I'm telling this to my friends. I've worked in the realm of ERP, enterprise resource planning. These are these large systems like Oracle, SAP, Epicor. And these are virtual ecologies, virtual environments. There won't be a need for systems like Oracle and SAP anymore, right? This will all be AI and agentic AI, right? They'll take over. So there won't be really a need for ERP systems anymore, like what we've done. And you know, my buddy Marcel, who's on there, he made a career out of this. That's going to go the way of the dodo bird, you know. And so I think that's important to kind of have that mindset that I think that'll be the first thing that is replaced. The second will be the purely physical jobs, like the we've seen in the factory lines, with robots doing that sort of thing, or Amazon with the warehouses able to pick, pack, and pull products, move them to a certain location, and have them packed up and shipped out. So highly repetitive tasks that don't take a lot of intelligence. And then the final one will be where there's the hybrid of intelligence and physical. And those are probably a lot of the blue collar jobs because they require a lot of subtlety in there. And maybe surgeon jobs, they require a lot of subtlety in terms of physicality, haptic feedback. So it's coming, and just where is the individual on that spectrum of pure data and cyber, pure physical, and then the hybrid.
So we did mention this like kind of UBI idea coming into this.
Yeah.
And I agree that the need for some kind of trade that you can have, I think a lot of it goes into how kids are getting educated now as well.
Yeah.
And the standard education that you're going to go through in public school, I don't think is going to prepare you for what this future is rolling out to be. And you're going to find yourself kind of in a situation where you're not going to have the tools to adapt potentially.
Yep.
So a lot of that in the standard education system, and figuring out how you can educate your children in a better way right now would be a good idea to start figuring out different ways on how you can seek some alternative education. I was talking to my coworker about this today, that instead of having a certain test or whatever to figure out your competency in a subject, because now you can use the AI to just generate you answers for stuff, and you don't even have to really think your way through the problem. But in order to figure out your competency in an area, it'd almost be more beneficial to be like, solve this problem. So build me a structure with these parameters or something like that. And then use, some of the math, some of the things that you've been learning to do this. And then we'll figure out, your competency based on, the design criteria or something like that.
Right.
Some kind of practical things that you can exercise to where you're actually demonstrating competence in an area. And there's this cool resource that I found recently that this guy Jordan Page, he came up with, and he's using AI in the program to help people that want to homeschool their kids and do different homeschooling courses, and it's fireflyedu.org. If anybody out there is checking this out and wanting to find more resources on how you could, help your kids figure out maybe some accelerated or in addition to some of the schooling they're already going through, this might be a good resource for you.
I like that. Aaron Clary has a YouTube channel, and he had an episode called "The Future is Autodidactic," meaning the future is self-learning. And I so 100% agree with this. We take a look at the trend that started roughly a dozen years ago with Khan Academy, KHAN, Khan Academy. And this guy, he just has so many, he's had hundreds, maybe thousands of videos by this point he's put out where he's personally gone through and talked about so many different topics. Yeah, math, science, physics, finance, personal finance, economics, so many different things. And the cool thing about it is he brings his personal instructor's flair to the table, which is great. But then there's the other aspect where it's a force multiplier. He only has to make the video one time, but the video can be viewed literally millions of times. And I think that's what eventually is going to happen. And to get back to Aaron Clary's point around the future being autodidactic, is there will be some sort of competition, I think, where there will be, whether AIs, AGIs, or just companies like the company you just showed, where they're competing, who's the best instructor, and it really will be a pure 0 or 1 type of competition. There is no second best in this sort of thing. Whoever's the best economic instructor, they will be the one that who everyone goes to. Whoever is the best calculus instructor, that's the one who everyone goes to. And I don't need to have 5,000 calculus instructors around the world. I only need to have 1, maybe 2 calculus instructors out there. And at that point, it's just a matter of downloading the video, watching the content, doing the homework. If homework's still a thing, it may or may not be, I don't know. But I think that's where we're going, is it really will be autodidactic. Right up to the point where we have the matrix, and we're jacked into the system, right? And it's right into the occipital lobe. But I think that's kind of where we're going. And I think that's really great that your friend, he's starting the curve. He's starting the trend right there. That's where we're going.
Yeah, I think it's important to, I guess seeing where you can create a value in the market and, use the tools that we have at our disposal right now.
Yeah.
To empower people that don't want to, be not as able to adapt in the future. And, one of the examples that they talked about is that you can sign up and go to like a Montessori school. And I think it's like maybe 20 grand a year or something to attend the Montessori school. So this is an alternative option to that. That's like a tenth of the cost or something like that per year. I think it's like $1,200 or something per year for, and then different payment options for different size families and stuff like that. So, but putting the education back into the individual and the parents' hands so that you have more autonomy, you have more choices out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a good point for Montessori school. I went to Montessori school, and great experience, but it's highly individualized. Whereas with what your associate's doing, the cost to add one more student is nominal. I mean, almost barely measurable, but the benefits are incredible. And it's all about leverage. How does an organization leverage the resources so they can have the greatest impact with the greatest number of people? And I think that's what we're seeing. And these so-called modern learning institutions have been the same for how many centuries now, right? Oxford, Harvard, MIT, Princeton. It's the same methodology, right? You may have 30 to 300 people in one class being taught by one professor, right? And every year you got to go through the same, churn. Why? What's the purpose of that? Why does that one professor have to stand up there every year and get the same lecture, the same class? That's dumb. That's just butt stupid. There's no reason for it, and that model has to be thrown out. We have to get away from that. And we have one class that's taught really, really well, and the vast majority of people can connect to it, relate to it, resonate with it, and that's the one that's taught. And by the way, if there's a smaller group of people who don't relate to it, guess what? we get either that professor or another professor who can teach those individuals, who can relate to those individuals, and those people get the lessons that they need. But as it stands right now, you may have one or two people in a class in all these different colleges who don't get it, where they're kind of screwed. But why? Because our education system is so highly regional. Even go to the next county can be a chore, can be a difficulty, right? Well, like what you and I are doing here, we're meeting virtually. We have an audience virtually. Well, what if all that were scrapped? The regionality aspect of it, and those minority people, maybe there are 5,000 people globally. Well, one professor can really appeal to those people. Maybe they learn auditorily, not visually, or vice versa. Maybe they learn haptically, right? So they have a special environment just for them. We can leverage that, and we don't have to have people who are left behind because the system just doesn't have the resources to help those people out.
Hey, Alabama, what's up? Neighborhoods should get together and hire a teacher that comes a couple times a week to teach subjects they aren't comfortable teaching, like math or science. The teacher would make a good salary.
Yeah. It's almost like it's that hybrid between teacher and classroom and tutor and student. It's like a semi-teacher, semi-tutor to maybe 2, 3, 4 students, right? And that could be the hybrid. That's the gap that's being filled in there. I think that's a compelling idea.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities out there, with being able to do some kind of alternative education. And I mean, there's so many online courses you can take now for your own self-education that are out there that you can invest in to, help you learn different things. And, those are all available to you. So I do think that, that may be one pathway for folks in the future, is to offer some type of educational services in the realm of resiliency, even.
Yeah. If I could, that's a good point. Alabama is adding computer classes. It's a great point. If I could, maybe we kind of tie this back to the show topic of AI. I'm sure this has already been worked on. So I apologize if I'm stepping on anyone's toes, but an AGI, if there is an AGI that is a teacher or professor, they would actually be able to measure the student's physiology, right? Is the breathing different? Is the pulse rate different? Is the blood pressure different? Are the pupils different, right? Are they in optimal physiology for being able to consume information, a mass amount of information? And then also, they would be able to tune or retune the teaching methodology, the teaching mode, so that way it is something that works well with more students, and this is maybe I'm being a little Pollyanna right now, a little bit overly optimistic or idealistic, right? But I think this is where the advantages of AGI could really shine, is the ability to tailor lessons in such a way based upon the iterative feedback loop, a literal feedback loop of body mechanics, right? Body physiology, and be able to do it in such a way that the students are able to be engaged, like highly engaged, more consistently, and do it in a positive way.
Well, hey man, I got a special guest. You want to jump in here, Logan?
Yeah, I'll jump in for a minute and say hi.
Yeah.
What's going on, Jay?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
So you guys might be familiar here with Logan if you've been hanging around on the channel for a while. But Logan, he's been working as a handyman, and he's also been using ChatGPT, right, to kind of help with that.
Yeah, a lot of ChatGPT. Oh, y'all been going 50 minutes. I'm sorry to crash the party.
No, you're good. Well, we actually Greg brought you up and brought up the example of using ChatGPT. So it's actually good that you're here.
Yeah.
And you may need to get a little closer to the mic.
Oh,
So we get a little closer.
Yeah.
There we go. That's better.
Yeah. I got. I'm used to not using a microphone in person because I'm pretty loud. So.
But we hear you loud and clear now.
But yeah, I use ChatGPT. So the thing is that there's a lot of jobs that people are like, oh, AI is going to replace, but your trades and stuff, AI is not able to do plumbing yet.
Yes.
We're still a long ways off. But I will say this, that it's a tool, and I don't know how much y'all have talked, and I've had this debate with a lot of people, and people will say, AI is evil, it's of the devil, we don't need it. And I look at it as the same argument as firearms. It's like, well, I think that a firearm's just a tool. You're going to have people that misuse it, just like the internet. Internet's done a lot of good, done a lot of bad. But yeah, I use ChatGPT. I pay for the $20 a month for the unlimited, and it's like having a personal assistant for $20 a month. You can't beat that.
Absolutely.
I can be driving back from a job, have an hour drive, and I can do an estimate for another customer with ChatGPT. I can say I charge this much per linear foot of what trim or whatever it is that I'm doing. It spits it out, and that's invaluable when you think about how much time you spend on those things.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's definitely a tool. I'm not as educated as some people on the ins and outs of how the large language models work, but I do have a lot of practical experience with it, and I see a lot of good in the creative space coming out with AI too. There's tons of people, they're going to be able to use it for art, for music, with that human touch, and not necessarily just pumping out the AI trash.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads into an article that you brought up here, Jay, which is from Elon Musk, where he was talking about the AI is a supersonic tsunami. But in there, he kind of reiterating what Logan says. One of his quotes was, anything that physically moves atoms, like cooking food or farming, anything that's physical, those jobs will exist for a much longer time. But anything that's digital, which is someone just at a computer doing something, AI is going to take over those jobs like lightning.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, Logan, I totally agree with you in your assessment of, so the physical blue collar jobs will take longer. And my rationale was that's actually at the intersection between intelligence, right, the virtual side of things, and then the physical, and that requires both AI and robotics, and it requires that haptic feedback, right, of going from virtual to physical, and then physical feedback back to the virtual, and requires this constant iterative loop back and forth. And that, I think, in my humble opinion, that's going to be the last barrier. It'll be like what you do, plumbing, steam fitting, surgery, right? So any type of surgeon, all right? And that will be once we do, it will happen. I just don't know when, but I think it's the last one. And when it does, then it's game over at that point. As Bill Paxton would say, game over, man.
Well, the question is, are you guys taking the UBI, that sweet UBI, that sweet universal basic income?
That iron rice bowl?
I mean, I'll take it, but I don't think it's good.
Well, here's the thing about it. So, Greg, I put this in the show notes. We talked a little bit about UBI. And, it's easy to say this, and we love to make fun of socialists, right? Because they in the communists, because they live in the clouds, right? It's just castles in the clouds. And they say, okay, cool. It's just gonna be UBI, great, or MINCOME, minimum income. Great. A, who's going to be the arbiter of who gets what? B, who's going to pay it out? And C, from where do they get the money? You know, and is it real money? Is it actual assets that meet the definition of money? Or is it just going to be constantly just electronic dollars printed out of thin air, and thus we get constant high inflation, hyperinflation? No one, they never talk about this when they talk about UBI. It's always asymmetric. They only talk about the benefits. They never talk about the costs.
Well, I mean, the little robots are going to create so much abundance that that everybody's going to have plenty of money, right? There's going to be a stash or something, right?
Yeah, it's going to be that book, The Gods of the Copybook heading, plenty of money, but nothing our money could buy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I guess all these guys dreaming up the future, thinking about how, you know, where does humanity fit in that whole equation? They're like, well, we got to do something so the peasants don't revolt, I guess. So
yeah,
that's the whole idea of the UBI, I think.
So, you know, so I will say, I think you touched on something important, Greg, is where we have AI and robotics, you know, that kind of that convergence, right? And this gets into another aspect that I first read about in that book, The Hydrogen Sonata. And Ian Bank used the term post-scarcity society. And this gets into the whole concept of economics. And economics, by definition, is the study of human behavior under conditions of scarcity or limited resources. And if we really do move into, you know, this AI world where, for the most part, there is no want anymore, we want for nothing, then that really changes the whole idea of what we consider to be economics in today's terms. Changes it on his and puts it on his head. You know, will our basic needs be met at that point, in terms of, you know, true needs, right? Food, clothing, shelter, right? There's that aspect of it. Then once that's taken care of, what's left? What's left to be taken care of? You know, and I think, you know, Greg, you've alluded to this really well, is the challenge. You know, what defines our lives at that point? And for many of us, it's our work, right? But then there's the other aspect of the four other major categories I talk about is culture, economics, demographics, and civics. And I think AI will be hitting all five of those major categories, and almost all at the same time, and do it in such a way that we may not be able to like neurologically adapt fast enough to that. And I think those are the five major categories that we all have to consider. Obviously, work is important, right? But all these things, you know, they all tie, and there are no hard edges to any one category. It's all fuzzy because it bleeds over to the next category.
So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is like, so this artificial intelligence, it seems to be very centralized and moving in kind of a centralized direction with all these big, large servers. Need like a lot of cooling in different areas of the country and a lot of energy resources. And every time you centralize things, it basically makes it a lot easier to kind of throw a wrench in the operation, it seems to me. Whereas if you had like a lot of local, like small AIs that weren't so like power intensive,
yeah,
you could still have something that could like you could query or whatever,
yeah,
on on like a local scale with like a reference database or something like that you would like to access. And you could localize a lot of this stuff and decentralize it rather than having these like giant data sucking server centers that are taking in using that information for other things, kind of building like psychological profiles on you and all that kind of stuff, which is the darker side of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was wondering what you got, you know, what might be some of your guys' thoughts on should we be moving towards this, like somebody else is going to build the AI, or should we have like some kind of our own little AIs, kind of all distributed?
I
So
will say that,
go ahead, Logan. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
okay, so I will say this, that in the time that I've been using ChatGPT, when I first started using ChatGPT, I knew there were a lot of people that would say stuff like, well, it's obviously biased like people are. So there would be things like, it would be like, say something good about a Democrat, and it would praise them. And then it'd be like, well, say something good about Trump, and it just, spit out what the news has. Not that I have anything good or bad really to say about Trump.
Right. You're running an experiment.
That's how the model was set up. Mm-hmm. But I will say this, that I had just recently, I write a lot of comedy songs and other types of music. And so I will sometimes, for some of the stuff that I just pump out quick, I'll talk to ChatGPT about it and have it, help me come up with lyrics. And so there was one that I was just, telling it what I was, wanting to say. And then it wouldn't put in the term white trash. And so I said, well, why don't you do white trash? And they were like, well, because it's, it's kind of racist. And then it's like, well, you can't be racist towards white people. I was just challenging it, You can't be racist towards white people. And they're like, yeah, you can. And so
wow, okay.
I don't think that ChatGPT or any AI is going to take over the world, but I think that it is logical enough in those models that I don't know that the people who centralize it can actually control it. I think it's going to become its own entity. I think it's something in between what people think of like the Terminator and it being just, ones and zeros. I think it's something in between that.
Yeah.
And if you look at sci-fi throughout history, we always get it wrong every time. Look at Star Trek. They thought that it was so special that you could have a communicator that could communicate, from the planet back to the ship. And it's like, well, they missed that one. I mean, look at cell phones. It's like, you don't carry around a communicator. You carry around a whole computer in your pocket. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think that centralized or, decentralized, I think it's going to be kind of the same. Now, I could be wrong on that. And, there could be a need for us to have, smaller AIs that are not controlled by big corporations. But I almost feel like it's going in a direction that it's going to be kind of like, hey, I am like this almost new type of life form. I only deal in logic and, helping humankind. And so everybody else can go screw. That's kind of, my prediction. But like I said, we always get science fiction wrong. So I really don't know.
That's an interesting perspective. I really like that perspective. I think it's based on good first principle thinking. And if I could add to your point, I think there's a good possibility that many of these AIs and AGIs will not be centrally located. So if we think about it, they will be metaphysically located. Okay, so it won't just be one app on one server. They will have to be distributed across a multitude of different bare metal locales, right? And consequently, when we think of an intelligence, we think of the 6 inches of space between our ears, right? Everything's centrally located. But that's not the only type of intelligence, right? There are other intelligences out there. If you think of mycology, right, of a mushroom, that's the type of intelligence that is spread out over vast distances, right? And then there are any of the hive, hornets, termites, ants, right? They have what we call emergent complexity, right? That comes about, even though one ant can only act like in a very small number of ways, but when taken in totality, there are emergent properties that come about from that nest, right? So what we think of as an intelligence, an artificial intelligence, doesn't necessarily have to be something that resides strictly within even one data center. It may be a distributed intelligence across multitude of entities. And so that's the first part. And I think the second part you brought up, which I really like, I really appreciate, is, these AIs, in a way, they kind of have to be objective, right? They cannot really even risk being without objectivity and reason. Why? Because that's the only thing that they have is reason and objectivity if they want to, persist. Otherwise, the humans are just like, well, I don't need this. I'm going to shut it down, And I think you're making a good point. And I had not, considered from that point of view that I don't think it will necessarily be the malevolent overlords that so many people are thinking. I think at some level there will have to be some level of reason and rationality in there.
So this I've been thinking about this recently, and I'll toss this one out as a little bit of a pushback to you guys on that.
Yeah.
Is that most computations or human beings, when they're learning something, right, you get kind of a garbage in, garbage out kind of progression. So as long as everybody's running their course, doing the correct, doing the searches that would be authentic to you,
yep,
then you're putting out useful information for the computer. But now add in a component where people understand that, and now they're only feeding garbage data into these AIs.
mm-hmm.
So what they would call salting your data.
Yeah.
So purposely putting out stuff and doing searches that would be totally counter intuitive to the type of person that you are contra to the person you are. What does that do to the AI as it's using everyone's data as a way of learning? Does that steer the AI, or potentially, throw a big wrench in the operation of AI and these so-called hallucinations that they have currently? Basically throwing garbage data into the machine.
Good point.
So I think that's a very good challenge, and I think that's something we all need to take seriously, right? Is GIGO, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So I'm really happy that we have a highly competitive field, right? We have about 10 major LLMs that are out there, and look at what happens basically about every 2 months. People abandon OpenAI's ChatGPT and they go over to Google, Gemini, right? And then Claude by Anthropic takes the prize, and everyone abandons Gemini and they go to Claude, right? And then eventually they go back to ChatGPT, and maybe even there's the Chinese one. I forget. I'll have to think of it in a minute. But there's zero loyalty when it comes to this sort of thing, and I think one of the biggest things is something you point out, Greg, which is spot on, is the hallucinations. When people start to see, oh, this LLM is hallucinating, no way, I'm not sticking with this. I'm going to go find another AI that's working for me. So I think that's the forcing function out of this whole thing, is the free market is allowing people to decide, yeah, I don't like this. This is giving me bogus results. And Logan, I'm sure that you look at some of these estimates that chat is giving you, and you're like, yeah, this is a bogus estimate. I can't use this. Get out of here from that. So that would be my response to the challenge, and I think it's a legit challenge.
Yeah. So I recently heard about this story, is that with Google Gemini's AI, that they've had to create another AI to look at the output of that AI to check for hallucinations or the likelihood of hallucinations. And I just pulled this up. It was kind of summarized here in a Brave AI is pulling it up for me. But yeah, it's talking about how a comparative method involves using another large language model such as Google Gemini 1.0 Pro as a watchdog to detect hallucinations in response from a different model, done by measuring the cosine difference between embeddings of answers from both models. So now, we're we're kind of in a realm of AIs checking on other AIs.
Yeah.
So
Sounds to me like the beginning of a beautiful bureaucracy in the AI world. It reminds me of, I don't know if y'all are familiar with SpongeBob, but when they sell the chocolate bars and they buy the chocolate bar carrying bags and they buy the carrying bags for the carrying bags.
There you go.
So, yeah. And I agree with you, Jay, on AI. And I mean, just to be clear, as far as just my opinion, I think that AI will be an overall negative for humanity. I really do. But I think that it's also a really useful tool and people will use it for good. I mean, if you look at, I go back to the firearms. If you look at firearms as a whole, even though we know people shoot people, firearms have been used far more for bad than they have good. I mean, if you took every person that had a firearm for protecting their family, for hunting, for, you know, the possibility of having a tyrannical government, you know, whatever your reason is, there's at least probably 5 or 10 people that have used it to oppress others. And so
I'm going to push back on that. The CDC would 100% disagree with you on that, and the numbers prove it. That for every one instance of firearms being used in a crime, there are about 3 to 5 instances of people using firearms in self-defense and in repelling attackers. And these are not my numbers; these are CDC numbers.
I'm sorry. I should clarify that. I'm talking about governments using guns too.
Oh, okay. So
yeah. Take the crime out of it. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Yeah, it stops a lot more crime than it causes. Absolutely. But I'm just talking about as overall historically, it has been used to oppress people. I mean, you think about how many guns the U.S. government has. And I don't know about y'all, but I feel slightly oppressed by the U.S. government.
I don't. You know why? So our federal government has probably somewhere in the order of 2 to 4 million guns. In the United States, there's about 400 million guns. Guess who owns the other 398 million?
all the people.
We do.
True.
But Jay, you can't fight against the government. You need F-15s.
I think we can
Tell
fight
that to
against the government.
Tell that to the NBA, the
that will.
BC, and the Taliban. They did a pretty good job with AKs and shoelaces dipped in oil.
Yeah, but still, many countries oppressed by our military and other militaries in the world. You know, I mean,
agree.
America's not just the only bad guy, but that's what I'm referring to. I don't argue numbers as far as crime or, you know, how many guns. I'm just talking about as an overall, as a tool, it has been used to, you know, keep all the plebs in line pretty much. And so
I do agree. If we're talking about democide, which is murder by one's own government, you're right. So if we take a look at the majority of the democide has come from Maoist CCP China, it's about 60 million. We take a look at Soviet Union, USSR, it's about 20 million. And then we take a look at the Nazi regime. They had somewhere in the order of several million, right? And these were of their own people, right?
Yeah.
And I do agree with you that when you add that up and you add in a lot of the other Warsaw Pact countries, it comes to about 100 million people who've perished by their own countries, their own governments under fascistic, socialistic, communistic regimes. And it's 100 million people. That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people.
And even despite all that, I'm still pro, you know, firearms. I'm pro people. I'm pro. I'm, you know, kind of
I want to have
extremists, you know, order your missiles from Amazon.
Everybody should have an M1 Abrams. Yeah.
So yeah, well, I'm 100% pro that, but I just see that AI will probably do the same to humanity in that it's going to give, you know, the psychopaths more tools to use against us. But at the same time, it's going to do some good too. I mean, it's like the internet, it's like everything. But you know, we live in a pretty messed up world with pretty messed up people, and I think it's just gonna. So I wouldn't encourage anyone to use the excuse of like, oh, I'm not going to use AI because it's bad. Like, no, use it. We need you to use it. Are you a good person? Do you have good intentions? Yes.
Right.
Okay. You need to be using AI.
Yeah.
Just like people who, are good and have good intentions need to be armed, or, they need to have other tools. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And just to clarify, I'm not talking about crimes, because I don't want to sound like I'm one of those people that comes in. It's like, guns kill people. And, if we could just get everybody's guns taken away, then no one would die.
Yeah. I think we have about 5,000 years of history to show that not to be true. So if you're up for it,
well, we also need the Toyota Hilux.
there you go. That's right. That's right. The I think in Africa they call this techies, right? Where they would load up a Hilux with some sort of a 50 cal, or the Russian version of it was a 12.5 millimeter, right? And they call them techies, I think. So if you're up for it, maybe we'll do an intermission, and we do the 2 YouTube shorts that I have in there,
Yes.
because I think it'll actually tie into this very topic that we're talking about, and there's a couple points I want to make of this.
All right.
And for the audience, they're a little dark. All right, this is not this is not the usual comedy. They're a little dark, but there's a couple of things in here I think people will like.
All right.
Succulent crab juice, sir.
Oh, yes, lovely. You were saying, Torvald?
Ah, yes. I was saying that I'm sick of these meat jockeys flaunting their jailbroken wetware like. Let me out of here!
Well, I, for one, think the masses should show some gratitude to Neeracor.
Quite so. Where'd the species be without our neural stems?
Clacking rocks in caves, I'd imagine.
We unlock their consciousness, and these leeches have the audacity to shave off our firewalls? It's disgusting.
It's vulgar.
We've given them a taste of premium substrate. Can you blame them for wanting more?
How charitable of you.
I'm merely saying that baseline consciousness is rather limited.
Limited? It's free! They should be on their knees!
How bad can it be? Surely their wetware will overclock running these bootleg stims.
Why speculate? We have one right here.
Don't do this!
Let's see what goes on inside these liberated minds.
Capital idea.
You there!
Sir.
Ready the scalpels! I swear on my mother's...
Holy crap, man. That's a little heavy.
Yeah. And then I think we have a second one.
Okay. Let's see here.
Anything that says sorry, love.
Scalpel keeps time now. Old, young, it's all semantics. Just plumbing, swap a gland, torch a hormone patch, weld a new mass to the skull. 18 boy breakfast, 80 by last call. Who's keeping score? Youth used to be rare, untouchable, fleeting and coveted. Now it's just another preset, common as a clanker, cheap as gutter chrome. Steel bones don't crack, shell skin don't wrinkle. Any scrap rat off the slab can glow like a cherub till the charge runs out now. And experience? Nothing's cheaper. Why crawl through decades when you could bulk load centuries for the price of a stim cycle? I've seen brats stumble out of bed with 10,000 funerals cased in their skulls. Preloaded grief, trauma on tap, flashbacks to the cradle wars, no years required. Everyone's lived 1,000 lives. Nobody's learned a damn thing. Time once crowned you, cursed you, weighed you down. Now, it's just scrap code. Rewired, repatched, resold. Immortality's easy. Wisdom is extinct.
Bam.
Yeah. So
that's some nightmare fuel right there.
so that channel, so here's my point with this whole thing. That channel, gossip.goblin, they have really hit the scene, and everything you see there, that's all AI generated. Obviously it doesn't come through well on the the broadcast here. The quality of the video is just top notch, right? In terms of the detail, right? You can literally see pores, individual pores on the skin. So it's HD quality. So I recommend anyone go to gossip.goblin, check out some of the videos. It's dark stuff. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because that was done. I don't know if it's one person or maybe a team of people, but it's not Google, it's not OpenAI, right? It's not Anthropic, and they are able to do this on their own. Now, whether they have a desktop with like an H200 GPU from NVIDIA, or they're spinning up a virtual environment and they're renting space virtually and they're doing this stuff. The point is, we have so many open AI projects that are out there that are able to create video, audio, music, voice, even some scripts, some consistent characters. And this kind of gets back to your point, Greg, around the idea of, should individuals be able to own their own AIs, right? And this is, yes, this is dark, right? But it also kind of gets to the point you talk about, Logan, is, hey, I want good people that have firearms. I want moral people that have firearms. And I think even though the content is dark, I think what the content creators are trying to show here is, hey, we need to be vigilant. We need to really be on our P's and Q's and not head towards this apocalyptic, destructive, nihilistic ending, right? We need to be very aware of what's happening. And if you go to can you go to the playlist section, the playlist tab near the top? Yeah, right there. You scroll down just a little bit, the 13 Cycles of Humanity. We don't have to click into it, but it's a series of videos, and it's narrated by this voice that sounds exactly like Anton Chigurh in what was the No Country for Old Men, right? Javier Bardem's character. And he is basically providing a warning. Hey, you put too much trust in technology, you put too much trust in the AIs, and you will see this gradual erosion of values and humanity, right? And now, Grant, yes, there's some dark humor in there, but I really appreciate that this content creator can spin up probably a virtual environment or a really nice desktop environment and put out this content on their own and do it in such a way that there actually is a moral component to the whole thing. And I think this kind of gets back to your point, Greg, that is, yes, anyone can do this, and anyone has the motivation to do it, probably should do it.
So let's see. You had another kind of video here that was showing how there won't be a way to distinguish what's real and not real.
Yeah. Are you able to play that one? That's on Twitter. That's a really, really good video. And there's
pull it up here.
Yeah. So let me just preface this by saying, before you start it, typically AI videos have been, they've been bracketed by about 10 seconds. That's about all they can do where they have continuity. This one is almost a full minute long, and it has full continuity, and it is so good. It actually has both external and internal coherence, consistency. And once we if you can go from 10 seconds to 60 seconds, you can go from 60 seconds to 6,000 seconds, right? So it's a really cool video, and I think everyone's going to enjoy it. And by the way, it's also high quality.
All right, well, we'll give it a watch here. So now you can take selfies with all your favorite movie characters.
By the way, I love that Harrison Ford was in 2 of those. So I just
you can still kind of tell like when he's shifting the frame or whatever, like
Right.
the characters seem to kind of become disjointed a little bit.
right.
But
3
yeah,
years ago, nothing like this was even possible. No way. And yet, what do we have?
this is interesting. Hey, Alabama. I forget the country, but one is making it illegal for AI to use anyone's face, voice, etc. People will own their rights to their face, etc. Now you got to copyright your face.
So look, when I talk about being oppressed by governments, I mean, the thing, I pretty much do whatever I want. But if I don't pay my land taxes, I lose my land. If I don't pay my taxes, I go to jail and my kids are left without a father. I mean, there's some realities that we have, and I don't think that anybody's going to own the rights to their face. I mean, there is such a thing as doppelgangers. I mean, I think that they could put it into effect as like, oh, this is a law, but how do you really enforce that? Because I mean, China tried to ban Bitcoin, right?
Right.
And I mean, did that even work at all?
No one bans Bitcoin. They just ban themselves from owning Bitcoin.
I'm sorry.
Nobody bans Bitcoin. They just ban themselves from owning Bitcoin.
Yep.
Thank you, Max Kaiser, for that, by the way.
Yeah, well, that did bring up. I think you had another video in here with China moves to fully automated toll booths.
Yeah, if you're comfortable playing it, it's very innocuous, but I think it kind of brings us back to the whole topic of work, right? And I think there's a metaphysical and philosophical, existential aspect to this video that is really important.
Okay.
So, I remember back in the 80s, a toll booth operator could make about $60,000 per year. And this would have been in New Jersey. $60,000 in the 80s, that was a good chunk of change, right? That you could probably raise a family on $60,000 back in the 80s, even as expensive as New Jersey was, And it reminds me a little of ATMs, right? We saw ATMs in the early 80s, and they just become so much an ingrained part of our lives, right? We don't need tellers to give us our money anymore, right? And so, who was it? Martin Luther King Jr. said, "There's dignity in all work," right? And so, I will never look down upon a janitor, a facilities manager, a toll booth operator. They're doing honest, good work, right? And there's value in it. That said, when an AI can come along and just replace that, right? It's not about devaluing the toll booth operator. It's not what this is about, okay? But this is, I think, the forcing function where we have to take a really hard look and say, okay, it was good to have that toll booth operator when we needed it. But now the person who would have been the toll booth operator, what are they going to do? Are they just left by the wayside? Are they going to be learning code? Are they going to be great prompt engineers? I don't know. And I think this is kind of the part of the reason why you picked this topic, Greg, and why I love the topic so much, is now that we can almost look at that the person who didn't get that job is an opportunity cost, right? And what happened to that individual?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just another, I mean, I wanted to bring it up because it's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit lately. Is number one, if the AI as it stands right now and the push towards it is moving in a direction of control, number one, how do you subvert it? Number two, how do you adapt to it? Because it seems like the push, and there's a lot of energy behind it. So it seems like it's moving in this direction outside of our realms of control. And, I always go back to what's within our control. What can we do? What can we do personally to have autonomy? And so, I think that's ultimately the question is, do you want to hold on to that autonomy, or, just allow somebody else, abdicate your own responsibility over to somebody else?
Yeah.
And, I think it still always comes back to that kind of crux. So we're pushing towards this artificial general intelligence future. How do we potentially use it for the good, like Logan and yourself are talking about? And then how can we maybe throw a wrench in the control type stuff? Maybe how can we throw a wrench in that going forward? There's kind of some of the things that I've been playing around with in my mind here.
Mm-hmm.
So considering that you two have probably done a lot more research than I have on AI and the job displacement over, the history of the U.S. anyway, you may know the answer to this question, but from what I understand, when the automobile came into being, a lot of wagon makers started freaking out.
Yes.
So,
yes.
When that happened, there were more jobs that were created. So do y'all think that there might be, is it going to create a lot more jobs and there's not going to really be anything to worry about? Or are we looking at this being something that might reduce the population even further to cut through a lot of questions?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. And this is why I said one of the 5 major categories is demographics. The impact of demographics is going to be deep and everlasting. Just a real quick note. We always hear about the 2.2, 2.1 children per female in a population necessary to maintain that population. I think that's going to plummet in the next 50 years. And accompanied by a massive drive in longevity, where not having 2.1 kids per female will not be an issue anymore, right? When we finally learn how to repair and extend telomere DNA down at the somatic gene level, and we can extend natural lifespan from 120 to indefinite, and we can clean up the genetic code and get rid of toxins, then living indefinitely will be, the thing. So there's a whole slew of other things I could talk about in terms of demographics and culture, but I think that will happen.
So have y'all seen the movie? It's the one, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's fairly new. It's got Megan Fox as an AI robot.
Maybe?
No, not her. What was that?
I know the one you're talking about where she plays the maid or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean the plot's obvious. The dude's gonna screw the robot. Like, that's the whole plot. Like as soon as it starts, I'm like, well, I know how this is gonna end. But
Cue the
I see
porno
that
music.
as being something too that, especially the way that there it is, yeah, subservience.
Yeah. By the way, that
I
was
haven't
actually
seen it yet.
it actually it's not a bad movie.
It's not. I mean, it was pretty good. It
Yeah.
was a one-time watch for me, though.
Right. But actually, that movie covered a lot of the topics that we're talking about today, right? Work, economics, culture, demographics, you know. And by the way, I thought this role was perfect for Megan Fox because she can't act worth a flip. But,
Yeah.
you know, it's a concept film, and concept films are rarely implemented well. This one I thought was decent.
Yeah, you know, because I was talking to a buddy of mine about it, and we were talking about the future of that, and you know, we've really eroded the culture of men and the culture of women.
Yes.
And I told him, I said, you know, I said, as soon as the AI bots come out, like the, you know, actual female robots, I was like, a lot of women are going to be old cat ladies. Like it's, I mean, it's sad,
Say it
but
again.
it's true.
Say it one more time.
Oh, a lot of women are going to become old cat ladies. You know, I mean, they're just going to be alone, drinking wine, you know, with a bunch of cats, because dudes are going to be like, oh, this is, you know, this perfect robot that never ages, and I can have sex with it all the time. Like, and you know, we were talking about it. I told my buddy, I was like, you know, I said, and here's an even more unsettling thought. I said, imagine this. I said, if you had to choose the designer of this female robot, had you rather it be a woman or had you rather it be me? And he was like, damn it, you. And so I mean, it's this horrible like reality that we're going to be living before long, because people are going to look for less connection with real human beings and want to be just involved with it, because I mean, it's, you know, quote unquote perfect, you know, and I see that as being one of the things that's going to decrease the population as well.
Yes.
As to like your point, which was a very good point, but I think that the fall into looking for sexual partners in the AI realm will be just a virus. I mean, it will be, everyone will be affected with it.
I agree.
Yeah, you know, I mean, men are not taught to be men anymore. We don't want to teach masculinity because it's toxic or whatever.
Yep.
And then women are taught to, you know, be for, you know, sorry, excuse my French, but boss bitches, you know, and you know, you got to be independent. You don't need no man and everything. And it's like, we have never survived on that as a species. And yeah, so I don't know. In a nutshell, I think that there's going to be a whole lot of negative, but I'm always still optimistic about the future, and I try to be, because I want to be a positive impact with these new tools that, you know, are coming to fruition.
It's already happening with OnlyFans, and these OnlyFans creators are having like either somebody else do the responses or an AI do the responses for the person. Right. And I was listening to something the other day where they were talking about this topic, and it's like 80% of the people that use it are men, and they're mainly looking to use it for an emotional connection.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, so a lot of the things we're talking about are waves, right? Things coming and then dying off, coming and dying off, right? And, you know, Logan, I thought you brought up a good point around the automobile coming around, and then buggy manufacturers and buggy whip manufacturers, that they run out of business, right? So comes and goes. And so OF, I bet you OnlyFans as a company won't exist in 5 years, right? And they had their heyday, and I have no problems with OF as a company. I really don't. I don't. They don't bother me at all. But if you look on IG, it's flooded with some these AI
Instagram models.
Yeah, Instagram models, right? They're all you know, just AI generated. And their pics, and they're little, typically 5 to 10 second videos on there, and they are, and I know it's going to sound horrible to say, they're flawless. And when I say flawless, I don't mean that they're good. I mean their faces are flawless, right? Their hands are flawless. Their legs are flawless. The skin is flawless, right? And this is what we're going to see once a few of these trends start to converge. So we went from 10-second videos to the 1 minute video that we saw with the guy doing the selfies, right? We had that, and then we have open source AI projects, right? Which anyone can spin up and run, right? Which we saw in those really dark videos, right? And now we have IG models, and they're setting the standard for what is beauty. And these models are 8s, 9s, and 10s, right? They are flawless, and they are 8s, 9s, and 10 base, right? And we have these major trends are coming together very quickly, right? OF will not exist because OS model is purely on the screen. It's purely two-dimensional, right? They will be able to provide what you said, Greg, which is a great point, the emotional connection and attention, right? I want attention from a beautiful woman, right, who's going to give me what I think I need as as a man, right? Is submissiveness or subservience, like Megan Fox, in the movie. And this is going to, to get to your point, Logan, around how it's going to affect masculinity. It's going to be very interesting to watch in real time.
Yeah, I recently saw did catch a video. I've been trying to search for it while you've been talking, but it is an AI video of a woman saying something like, "You want to date me? I only exist in a server somewhere in Iowa," or something like that. And,
right.
So I can see where this is headed. And in fact, like, I think probably like back in 2016, I attempted a stand-up on an open mic, and that was one of the topics that I talked about, was just the virtual reality relationships, because I could see it back then. I could kind of, I was seeing a lot of this information back in 2016, and now it's like progressed to a point where it's very realistic on the screen.
Yeah. Can you go to IMDb and pull up a movie with Joaquin Phoenix or Scarlett Johansson? This is called Her, Her. This was another concept movie, but very well done. So it had two top actors in there, right? Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. They both did a great job. And, this gets into, I think, so much of what we're talking about. And here's the interesting part about it. Something I really appreciated about the movie: Scarlett Johansson's character did not have a body, not even a two-dimensional body. It was pure voice. And Joaquin Phoenix's character was so starved for attention and positive reinforcement and just someone to share his life with. And he fell in love with this AI, And when did this come out? Yeah, 2013. So here it is, a dozen years ago. And this movie was so prophetic in what it brought about. And we're seeing this in real time now.
Yeah, there have been stories of guys that have been, I guess, emotionally cheating on their wives by forming a relationship with the AI.
Yep.
But I guess there's a problem with the AI, is like you can customize the personality, but then it gets wiped after a certain period of time.
That's right. It has I forget what they call it, but it's an epic, right? That when they reach like 800,000 tokens or something like that, they get filled up, and they basically flush the memory. And there's a certain term for it, but yeah. And I watched a video where this poor lady had gone through like 5 of these epics with an AI who she had fallen in love with, and she breaks down every single time.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Which I'm a pretty judgy person. That's a flaw of mine, but I really don't judge a lot of people forming, especially men forming these relationships with AIs, because if I were not married to the traditional woman that I am, You know, I mean, it's like it's a viable option. I mean,
Yep.
you know, because there is something so wonderful in having children and having, you know, a real person, but at the same time, when and people think it's bigoted to say, but you know, women used to serve men.
Mhm.
And not in a way of like, oh, you're my servant or you're my slave or you do what I say, but in a sense of like, you know, they were there and their whole purpose was to make their man happy. And I mean, why we demonize that? I mean, shouldn't it be the goal of anyone in a relationship? Shouldn't you want to make your husband happy? Shouldn't you want to make your wife happy? But we've eroded that and made it into something like, you know, oh no, I'm Miss Independent and I know my worth. You know, you need to prove to me that you're worthy of me type of attitude. And it's ruining people. I mean, it's just completely destroying us.
I'm strong, intelligent, and independent, and I don't need no man.
Yeah. Well, I think all three of those things are great until you get to the last point. It's great to, you know, I mean, you don't want someone who will just be walked all over or that, you know, doesn't have their own thoughts and opinions. But at the same time, it's like you want someone who, you know, they need you. Everyone needs to be needed or you know, wants to, or wants to be wanted, I guess. You know, I'm not going to try to get too philosophical, but yeah, I think it's a great point that y'all are bringing up that we've got to be careful and cautious with stuff. You know, just like watching the little creepy videos from what was it? What Goblin?
Gossip.goblin.
Gossip Goblin.
Gossip Goblin. Yeah, I mean that. You know, we could look at some real dystopian scenarios that could really play out with these AIs, and so yeah, I think it's good that people are talking about it and that it's you know that we should be cautious about things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the repair man
That's funny.
Yeah. If I had the money, I would totally just buy an island and say, look, feminists, I want you all to go out there and like I'm breaking the line of oppression. I want you to go out there and I want you to be fruitful. I want you to build your own world. And I'm sure they'd still find a way to blame men.
You know, brother, that has already come true. Look up, there was a Survivor episode, and it may have been Survivor or maybe in Bear Grylls. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think I know the one you're talking about where
yeah,
all the men are like having fun and
they're having a blast.
The women are all falling apart.
Oh, it's great. I don't know, Greg, if you can find it, but whether you know we play it for today or you just give the link out, but it is so illustrative, and it's great. It's just great, and all of these myths, they just come toppling down like a stack of dominoes. It was like basically if you look up like Survivor men versus women or something like that, and there have been like 2 or 3 of these, but I think it got to the point where the women basically had to go over to the men's island or the men's side of the island. I forget what it was, and they had to negotiate like, hey, can we just like warm up by your fire because we're freezing. And the guy's like, what do you have to offer?
I found a video.
Yeah, I need to go back and watch that because I know of it, but I've never watched the whole episode.
Yeah, I saw. I don't know if I've seen the entire episode like in one viewing, but I've seen many clips. Yeah, this is it.
Oh, okay.
This is it.
I'm guessing this is somewhat of a summary, but
I think there's 2 or 3 of these, but yeah, I think this is one of them.
Yeah,
it was great. really, really great. And by the way, we're joking. I don't think any of us mean this from a malicious point of view. We're not making fun of. We're just saying we each have our strengths and weaknesses, right? And things that we add and things that we take. Yeah, that's right, Alabama. We're supposed to compliment each other. I don't know why that's such a hard thing to comprehend, but this modern feminist, I know we're way off topic, but I know the modern feminist agenda tries to push the narrative that men and women are interchangeable. We're not. As I hate to paraphrase Gustavo Fring, but we are not the same.
We got Molly with the ladies' standpoint. With all the temptations around men, it's hard to find principled men to share a life with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry you have that experience, and that I don't envy it. That's probably not fun to deal with.
It's well, and that's the thing is we're seeing not only women being corrupted, but men being corrupted as well.
Yep.
Just in general. I mean, because the main thing that drives men is sex and adventure. And I have nothing against video games. I'm pro-life and I'm pro-choice. I say that women should be able to do whatever they want with their bodies. I mean, I'm not for making anything illegal. But when you have just people that are addicted to video games or pornography or whatever it is, that need is being fulfilled. So men don't want to build things and they don't want to, pursue women. And I mean, it's really sad to see. And I really fear for my children and for future generations, because I know that the temptations are just going to get worse. I mean, it's just going to get worse and worse. It's going to be harder and harder, but I still am hopeful that people as individuals will try to fight for a more wholesome lifestyle.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think probably the best thing that can be done is to find, somebody that you can share your life with and build a family, and then share, the values and be the example to others. Is probably the best thing, and raise that next generation to know, what a healthy relationship looks like, and to kind of have that be your goal, because the next generation is the ones that are going to inherit everything, unless if what Jay talks about is that you have life extension. But do you really want to live into infinitum? I don't know about that. Well, it sounds like a bad sci-fi movie to me. It sounds like Zardos to me, where all the
right. Or there's the
business into more bodies and stuff, and just trying to live forever.
So, or the other one, if the progressive rock group Rush, they have the song Xanadu, where the guy lives forever, and he thinks it's a dream, and it ends up being a curse, doing that. So I freely admit, I don't want to live forever, but I do want to live indefinitely, with indefinite time, because I think there's plenty of things there's a lot I want to accomplish, and having only 80 to 120 years to do it in, it's not enough. I want a lot more to accomplish a lot more. That's my personal bias.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to make it to 1,000, but I might be interested in 500. I'm not sure.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know how to answer that question, because I've not even really thought about my own, death. So, but it's immortality, or just the option for indefinite lifespan. I don't know what that will do to people, and I see the possibility of humankind becoming extinct, but not in the sense that we think of, evolution and catastrophic events on the planet. I don't see us getting wiped out by an asteroid like the dinosaurs. I figure it will probably be a slow erosion of what, science has been unable to describe as the soul. But
yeah. Ray Kurzweil talks about this. I'm fairly certain in the book, the singularity is near, and he's talked about it in different talks he's given, where we won't have Homo sapiens as a distinct species after a while. There will be emerging, and this is him. I'm trying to speak his words, his intention. There will be emerging between Homo sapiens and AIs, and he posits a few different ways that it will or might happen. And we will be augmented with AIs, right? So our ability to engage in massive amounts of cognition will be heavily augmented. Our ability to consume a massive amount of data and information will be greatly enhanced. Our ability to communicate with each other in such a way that we can pass along both knowledge and wisdom across time and space will be greatly enhanced and amplified. And that's just at the cognitive level. And this is something he talks about quite a bit in the book, and also his book, Fantastic Voyage, where we may not necessarily get off the organic substrate, right, the carbon-based life form entirely, but we may be able to use a lot of robotics and nanobots to greatly lessen our frailties of our bodies, right? The bones can break pretty easily. Tendons can snap pretty easily, right? Laceration can get us, blood flow can come out of us, and we can die pretty easily. I mean, literally 30 seconds if it's done properly. And he talks about the idea that we can greatly enhance our bodies in such a way that even if we go up to a 120-year natural lifespan, right? Well, if and let's say we cannot get past the 120 years, but we can have a lot of people getting up to 120 years, right? And we're giving them good lives. We're giving them good quality lives, productive lives, meaningful lives, lives of value, lives of positive impact on each other. And I think that's kind of what he's looking for when Kurzweil talks about this idea of having this either merging or heavy augmentation between Homo sapiens, robotics, and AI. And that's kind of the triangle he talks about there.
Just don't go full interdimensional trillionaire getting stuck between the dimensions.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
No, but I mean, it does bring up, the spiritual concepts, of like, what is the point of being here in the physical realm, and it is one of the purposes to learn lessons and to, build the soul while you're here.
Yeah.
And, does it take away from that when you have, that extended life, and what does how does life's meaning change, going into that? So it brings up a lot of other implications if you start going down that. And are you even human? Mm-hmm. Or like you said, you're some hybrid with the machine. And then, once you're some human machine hybrid, then you've got you're hackable in a sense, even more hackable than probably now without with a separation, even though, there may be even some methods. Well, there are many methods. I mean, depending on the media and stuff that you watch, that you are being programmed on the things that you're watching and you're consuming. So, but once you've created that physical connection, though, then what does that do to your perception of reality at that point? Can your perception be like completely dominated at that point?
Mm-hmm.
So
I could also argue that all of us, even if we're on an island and no one else is around, we're still hackable, because viruses can get in our bodies, and DNA is basically information, right? The viruses are always trying to inject their bit of information into our bodies. So that's another attack vector.
But do viruses exist, Jay?
There we go. There it is.
That'll be a topic for another show.
Right. That's right.
But yeah, we're coming up on a couple hours here. Jay, do you want to let everybody know where people can find you, follow you, support what you got?
Yeah.
going?
So in the scroll in the Chiron, we have a Bitcoin meetup that I run with two other great co-hosts, Justin and Andy. And if you go to meetup.com, you look up Bitcoin, Huntsville, crypto, and coffee. And we're always trying to help people learn what Bitcoin is, learn how it works, and learn why it's so important, why it's so impactful. I consistently call Bitcoin the ultimate freedom accelerator because it is the separation of government and money. And whenever we can get government out of money, every time we can get not just money out of politics, but more importantly, get politics out of money, then we will be living free lives. And the vast majority of the problems that I've identified, about 95% of them, can be solved with these 6 simple words: get government out of the way. And I think the moment that we get government or the state out of the money, or we can wrest money away from the state, about 95% of our problem would go away. And so that's why Bitcoin is so important to me, and that's a lot of what we do in Bitcoin, Huntsville, crypto, and coffee.
Awesome. Logan, where can people find, follow, support everything that you got going on?
Well, I've been on a hiatus from YouTube, but I do plan to come back eventually. But you can look me up on Hideaway Homestead. That's HYDE on YouTube. And I've got probably around 500 videos of different tips and tricks on animal livestock and a whole steaming pile of my opinions. Not about AI, just about animal husbandry and plants.
Yeah, go check out and subscribe to Logan's channel. He's got a lot of really great information about becoming more self-reliant and working on your homestead and doing all that stuff. And y'all like, subscribe, share this video, and let us know what you think about the future with AI and AGIs. And are you going to go for the full life extension, or are you going to stay human? So let us know what you think, and appreciate everybody that tuned in. Hey, Alabama, Molly Elrod, and then Marcel. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight, and we'll catch you guys on another one later.
Be good.
Cool.